They told me the ruck would feel lighter after mile 3. They lied. The straps bit deeper, sweat salted my lips, and the gravel at Fort. It doesn't matter which base, they're all the same at dawn. Smelled like damp earth and metal. What I remember most isn't the ache in my shoulders. It's the stairs. The way they slipped over my uniform and lodged like burrs. I was the only woman in my platoon, and that fact arrived everywhere I did, 3 steps ahead, like a rumor that breathed. I learned early that silence could be armor. So I counted breaths, 4 in, 4 out, while Sergeant Klein's voice carved through the formation. "Pick it up, Echo Platoon. Ground doesn't move itself." He never said my name wrong. He never said it at all. I didn't know if that was mercy or a test. The guys invented nicknames like they were tossing pebbles. Princess. Poster. Quota. They never threw them when a drill sergeant could hear, and never with enough venom to get themselves burned. It was the hiss in between words, the smirk when I beat a time, the way they waited to see if I'd flinch. I didn't. Not because I was brave, because flinching gives the pebble gravity. At the range, the world narrowed to the geometry of breath and trigger. 3 slow pulls, 3 clean holes. My heart steadied at the steadiness of it. A rifle doesn't care what you look like. It doesn't care if your ponytail is regulation length or if your voice is high. It cares that you respect it. I did. "Good grouping," Specialist Ramos muttered, surprised, as if talent should have asked permission before wearing my face. I nodded and said nothing. The metal smell of gunpowder stayed on my skin long after we cleared chambers and cased weapons. It felt like proof. Nights, I wrote letters I didn't send. To my mom, who wasn't speaking to me after I enlisted. To my high school track coach, who told me bravery looked different on different people, and I thought she was just trying to make me feel better about my time. To the girl I used to be, the one who stood at the bus stop and fantasized about disappearing. I told her I hadn't. That disappearing and becoming are cousins but not twins. The first time they laughed out loud, we were at the motor pool. I don't know what was funnier to them, my small hands around a massive wrench or the grease streak under my eye I didn't know was there. "Careful, Princess," Haynes said. "You break a nail and we'll all have to go on medical leave." The men snorted. I wiggled the wrench onto the stuck bolt and felt something old inside me harden into a blade. I didn't look at Haynes. The bolt surrendered with a groan. I handed the wrench back to Staff Sergeant Tate and asked, "What's next?" He didn't smile, but his eyes warmed half a degree. That half degree kept me going a week. There was one of them who didn't laugh. Carter, private first class with shoulders like a bridge and a scar tucked under his chin that looked like someone had tried to erase him and failed. He ran point and never lost his breath. After lights out, I'd hear his low voice reciting names into the dark. I thought maybe they were family. Later, I learned they were the names of people he'd promised to carry. We all have our lists. Mockery is cheap until it finds a microphone. The day it did, we were at the confidence course, which is Army humor, because there's nothing confident about a 12-foot wall with no ladder. The trick is momentum. Sprint, plant, leap, grab, fling. The trick is also hands big enough and arms long enough. I had 2 out of 4. I sprinted, planted, leapt, grabbed, and hung like a wind chime. Laughter broke over me. Someone clapped slowly, Haynes again. "Come on, poster. Show us how empowerment works." Heat rose in my face. I dropped, stepped back, ignored the buzzing in my skull, and ran again. Plant, leap, fingertips, slip. The ground punched my heels. I tasted copper and realized I'd bitten my lip. I didn't look at anyone. I looked at the wall. If I stared hard enough, maybe it would grow a notch for my boot. It didn't. The third try, my fingers caught the edge, and then my left wrist screamed as if a firecracker had gone off in the joint. I slid down, useless as a flag on windless day. Klein's shadow fell over me. "You done?" he asked. Not unkind. Not kind. I'm not broken, Sergeant, I said, cradling my wrist, hating the wobble in my voice. Good. Then you'll get over. He turned to the platoon. Next. I stepped aside, swallowing humiliation like it was breakfast. Carter jogged past without looking at me. 2 beats later, he was over the wall. His landing thudded like a period. The next guy struggled, made it, turned, smirked at me like the wall, and I were the same species of failure. At Chow, the laughter traveled table to table, losing sharpness, gaining audience. Maybe we should get her a step stool. Maybe we should get her a waiver. I forced mac and cheese into a mouth that had turned into a lock. If I didn't eat, I'd shake on the range tomorrow. If I did eat, it would sit in me like a stone. Choose your stone. I took my tray outside and sat on the half-broken curb where the cigarette butts collected. The sky was Marine Corps blue, too perfect for my mood. A breeze flipped the corner of my napkin, and I pinned it with my spoon. I told myself I'd get over the wall on my day off. I'd practice until my fingers bled. I told myself I had time to earn respect. Time laughed too. Hey! The voice was low, roughened by too many miles. Carter stood there with his tray balanced on one palm, eyes scanning like he was still on patrol. He didn't ask if he could sit. He just did. We ate in synchronized silence. It felt almost like kindness. He finished first. Before he stood, he said, "They don't know what they don't know." He didn't look at me when he said it. Then he left. That night I put, "They don't know what they don't know," on a sticky note and hid it in my cap. I don't know why. Maybe I needed a sentence to carry. The next morning, the air smelled like rain that hadn't made up its mind. We were slated for a ruck and then medical training with Doc Alvarez, tourniquets, pressure dressings, scenarios. Scenarios meant fake blood and real adrenaline. The guys liked those days because they could show off, carry 2 litters, crack jokes while tying a cat, flirt with the line between bravado and skill. I liked those days because my hands knew what to do, and no one argues with blood. On the run, Haynes drifted back to pace with me. "You know, Princess," he said, "you could always transfer. HQ needs typists." I was breathing through my nose, saving my mouth for when the hill came. I used my mouth anyway. "You could always try shutting up," I said evenly, as if we were discussing weather. He laughed, delighted, like I was a puppy that had tried to bark. "Spicy," he said. "Careful not to burn yourself." We turned the corner by the motor pool and saw the ambulance already parked by the training field. Doc had set up his obstacle course of crises. Dummies sprawled under camo netting, smoke machines exhaling theatrical fog, orange cones like whispers of order. "Today we practice like it's real," Doc called, "because one day it will be." His tone, easy but edged, stitched a different kind of silence across the platoon. I didn't know it then, standing there with my wrist taped and my pride raw, that by sundown the jokes would feel like artifacts from a world we couldn't get back to. I didn't know that a voice would rise from the dirt, with blood thickening its consonants, and change the temperature of the air. I didn't know that competence could become confession, that hands could tell a truth that mouths had refused. I only knew my heart was a drum, my breath was a metronome, and my place in the formation held, even if it felt borrowed. "Teams of 3, Doc barked. You, and you." He pointed. He pointed at me. He pointed at Carter. He pointed at Haynes. Of course he did. The rain came just as Doc Alvarez predicted. A steady curtain that blurred the edges of everything, making even the gravel hum. The mock battlefield stretched before us. Camo nets drooping, smoke curling low, dummies scattered like broken mannequins waiting for resurrection. Doc's voice cut through the drizzle, sharp and unbothered. "Remember your roles. You're medics now. Minutes matter. Lives matter." He paired me with Haynes and Carter. Of course. I didn't ask why. Maybe the army likes irony as much as it likes order. Haynes rolled his shoulders, half a smirk, half a dare. Carter just nodded once, the scar under his chin catching the light. Scenario, Doc barked. Explosion at a convoy site. You have 3 casualties, 1 critical. Clock starts now. The air cracked with the sound of the starter pistol, and we ran. Mud clawed at my boots. The first dummy lay under a tangled net. I yanked it free, shouting, "Leg wound! Tourniquet!" Carter was already on his knees, wrapping the band above the thigh, his hands steady, precise. Haynes hovered, uncertain. "Pressure dressing," I yelled, but he fumbled with the gauze like it was foreign currency. I grabbed it, pressed down, and counted seconds under my breath. The rain made the fake blood run thin and pink. It looked almost real enough. "Next!" Carter barked, voice clipped, command sharp enough to slice through Haynes's hesitation. We moved. Second dummy, torso wound. I tore open a chest seal and slapped it down, sealing air, sealing panic. Haynes crouched beside me, quiet now. Maybe the adrenaline made him forget to mock. Maybe the storm did. Then Carter froze. "Where's the third?" he shouted. I looked up. Beyond the smoke and the scattered orange cones, someone lay too still, too real. For a heartbeat, I thought it was another dummy, part of the scenario. Then I saw the boots. Issued, worn, muddy, not plastic. A dark red spread was blooming around them, not theatrical paint. "Doc!" I screamed, already moving. "We've got a live one." Carter was right beside me. Haynes followed, pale, silent. The soldier, I didn't know his name yet, was on his back, chest rising shallow, each breath a battle. Shrapnel glittered at the edge of his vest. His skin was the color of wet paper. "Stay with me," I said, dropping to my knees. "You hear me?" His eyes fluttered open, gray, unfocused. He tried to speak, but blood bubbled at his lips instead. Carter ripped open the medkit. "Need pressure here," he said, voice stripped of panic. Haynes handed over gauze like an automaton, following orders that mattered now. Doc Alvarez was sprinting toward us, but we all knew how fast blood could win a race. I pressed down hard, feeling the warmth soak through the fabric. The soldier gasped, his hand twitching against my arm. "Easy," I whispered. "You're gonna be okay." He blinked, tried again to form words. This time they came out in shards. My squad, we're safe," Carter lied gently. "They're safe. Focus on breathing." Doc slid in beside us, hands already moving. "Keep pressure. Good. Hold it. Don't stop until I say." His calm was a miracle I clung to. Rain hammered the ground, sirens in the distance, real ones this time. Someone must have called the medics. "Pulse?" Doc snapped. "Thready," Carter said. "He's losing it." Doc met my eyes. "You trained for this. Stay with him." The soldier's gaze found me again, unfocused but deliberate, like he was trying to memorize my face. His lips trembled. You're the... "Don't talk," I said. "The girl," he finished, a weak grin breaking the blood on his teeth. "They said, you couldn't..." His eyes rolled back. "Hey!" I shouted. "Stay with me!" I pressed harder, counting compressions in my head, though I wasn't doing CPR yet. Carter was cutting away fabric, Doc barking orders that blurred into noise. The world narrowed to the pulse under my palms, faint, fragile, fading. "Pressure's dropping," Doc yelled. "We're losing him!" I don't know what made me do it. Instinct, anger, something old and defiant. But I leaned close and whispered, "You're not dying on me, soldier. Not like this. Not while I'm here." Maybe he heard. Maybe the universe did. But his pulse fluttered once, then steadied. Doc looked up, startled. "Keep that pressure. Whatever you're doing, don't stop. The medevac arrived minutes later. A rush of noise and motion. Gurney wheels, voices, the metallic scent of blood mixing with rain. They lifted him, hooked lines, shouted vitals. And then he was gone, swallowed by the storm and the ambulance doors. When the sound faded, silence hit harder than any explosion. Doc stood, wiped his face. "Good work," he said. To me, then to Carter and Haynes. "All of you." But I saw it, the glance he gave me before walking off. Not surprise, not pity. Respect. Quiet, hard-earned, real. The others packed gear in silence. Haynes tried to light a cigarette, failed twice, then pocketed it. Carter crouched to pick up a piece of gauze I'd dropped. "You okay?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. My hands were shaking. I wasn't sure if from the cold or the adrenaline. "He called me the girl," I said finally, voice hollow. Carter nodded. "He's alive because of that girl." When I looked at him, there was no smirk, no irony, just truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the soldier's face, heard his words. They said you couldn't. I thought of all the laughter, all the names, all the walls I'd tried to climb. And somewhere inside, a quiet voice answered back. I did. The rain came just as Doc Alvarez predicted, a steady curtain that blurred the edges of everything, making even the gravel hum. The mock battlefield stretched before us, camo nets drooping, smoke curling low, dummies scattered like broken mannequins waiting for resurrection. Doc's voice cut through the drizzle, sharp and unbothered. "Remember your roles. You're medics now. Minutes matter. Lives matter." He paired me with Haynes and Carter. Of course. I didn't ask why. Maybe the Army likes irony as much as it likes order. Haynes rolled his shoulders, half a smirk, half a dare. Carter just nodded once, the scar under his chin catching the light. "Scenario," Doc barked. "Explosion at a convoy site. You have 3 casualties, 1 critical. Clock starts now." The air cracked with the sound of the starter pistol, and we ran. Mud clawed at my boots. The first dummy lay under a tangled net. I yanked it free, shouting, "Leg wound! Tourniquet!" Carter was already on his knees, wrapping the band above the thigh, his hands steady, precise. Haynes hovered, uncertain. "Pressure dressing," I yelled, but he fumbled with the gauze like it was foreign currency. I grabbed it, pressed down, and counted seconds under my breath. The rain made the fake blood run thin and pink. It looked almost real enough. "Next!" Carter barked, voice clipped, command sharp enough to slice through Haynes's hesitation. We moved. Second dummy, torso wound. I tore open a chest seal and slapped it down, sealing air, sealing panic. Haynes crouched beside me, quiet now. Maybe the adrenaline made him forget to mock. Maybe the storm did. Then Carter froze. "Where's the third?" he shouted. I looked up. Beyond the smoke and the scattered orange cones, someone lay too still, too real. For a heartbeat, I thought it was another dummy, part of the scenario. Then I saw the boots. Issued, worn, muddy, not plastic. A dark red spread was blooming around them, not theatrical paint. "Doc!" I screamed, already moving. "We've got a live one." Carter was right beside me. Haynes followed, pale, silent. The soldier, I didn't know his name yet, was on his back, chest rising shallow, each breath a battle. Shrapnel glittered at the edge of his vest. His skin was the color of wet paper. "Stay with me," I said, dropping to my knees. "You hear me?" His eyes fluttered open, gray, unfocused. He tried to speak, but blood bubbled at his lips instead. Carter ripped open the medkit. "Need pressure here," he said, voice stripped of panic. Haynes handed over gauze like an automaton, following orders that mattered now. Doc Alvarez was sprinting toward us, but we all knew how fast blood could win a race. I pressed down hard, feeling the warmth soak through the fabric. The soldier gasped, his hand twitching against my arm. "Easy," I whispered. "You're gonna be okay." He blinked, tried again to form words. This time they came out in shards. My squad, we're safe," Carter lied gently. "They're safe. Focus on breathing." Doc slid in beside us, hands already moving. "Keep pressure. Good. Hold it. Don't stop until I say." His calm was a miracle I clung to. Rain hammered the ground, sirens in the distance, real ones this time. Someone must have called the medics. "Pulse?" Doc snapped. "Thready," Carter said. "He's losing it." Doc met my eyes. "You trained for this. Stay with him." The soldier's gaze found me again, unfocused but deliberate, like he was trying to memorize my face. His lips trembled. You're the... "Don't talk," I said. "The girl," he finished, a weak grin breaking the blood on his teeth. "They said you couldn't." His eyes rolled back. "Hey!" I shouted. "Stay with me!" I pressed harder, counting compressions in my head, though I wasn't doing CPR yet. Carter was cutting away fabric, Doc barking orders that blurred into noise. The world narrowed to the pulse under my palms, faint, fragile, fading. "Pressure's dropping," Doc yelled. "We're losing him!" I don't know what made me do it. Instinct, anger, something old and defiant. But I leaned close and whispered, "You're not dying on me, soldier. Not like this. Not while I'm here." Maybe he heard. Maybe the universe did. But his pulse fluttered once, then steadied. Doc looked up, startled. "Keep that pressure. Whatever you're doing, don't stop." The medevac arrived minutes later. A rush of noise and motion. Gurney wheels, voices, the metallic scent of blood mixing with rain. They lifted him, hooked lines, shouted vitals. And then he was gone, swallowed by the storm and the ambulance doors. When the sound faded, silence hit harder than any explosion. Doc stood, wiped his face. "Good work," he said. To me, then to Carter and Haynes. "All of you." But I saw it, the glance he gave me before walking off. Not surprise, not pity. Respect. Quiet, hard-earned, real. The others packed gear in silence. Haynes tried to light a cigarette, failed twice, then pocketed it. Carter crouched to pick up a piece of gauze I'd dropped. "You okay?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. My hands were shaking. I wasn't sure if from the cold or the adrenaline. "He called me the girl," I said finally, voice hollow. Carter nodded. "He's alive because of that girl." When I looked at him, there was no smirk, no irony, just truth. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the soldier's face, heard his words. They said you couldn't. I thought of all the laughter, all the names, all the walls I'd tried to climb. And somewhere inside, a quiet voice answered back. I did. The storm passed, but its echo stayed in the hallways, in the metallic smell of soaked boots lined up by the door, in the damp uniforms drying like ghosts over bunk rails, in the way everyone looked at me now, longer than they used to. Not cruelly, not mockingly, just longer, like they were trying to solve a puzzle whose answer made them uncomfortable. By morning, the story had already mutated. The soldier I helped, Private Darnell, I learned later, had survived surgery. Word was he'd asked about me in the hospital. Some said he called me his guardian angel. Others said he'd only muttered something about the girl who wouldn't quit. Either way, the narrative had shifted. I wasn't Princess anymore. I was Doc's shadow, the medic girl, that crazy one who stopped the bleeding. I didn't know whether to be proud or exhausted. During chow, Carter sat across from me again, as if it was no longer a statement but a habit. He didn't talk much, which suited me fine. When he did, it was always something that lingered. "They're trying to figure out if yesterday means you belong," he said between bites of powdered eggs. I swallowed water, met his gaze. "And what do you think?" He shrugged. "You belonged the minute you didn't quit." I wanted to thank him, but words felt unnecessary. Respect in the military isn't granted through speeches. It's through silence, through watching someone show up again and again when it hurts to. By afternoon, Sergeant Klein called me into his office. His walls were lined with commendations, photos of deployments, and one photo that didn't belong. A little girl on his shoulders, missing her 2 front teeth. Maybe his daughter. Maybe his reason for still giving a damn. "At ease, Private," he said, without looking up from the report in his hands. "Heard you kept a man alive yesterday." "Yes, Sergeant." He finally looked at me. "Doc Alvarez said your quick pressure and communication probably made the difference." "That true?" "I just did what we were trained to do, Sergeant." He nodded slowly, eyes narrowing, not in suspicion, but in assessment. "That's what they all say, but not everyone does it under fire." "It wasn't fire, sir. Just a drill that turned real." His mouth twitched. "Drills are easy until they stop being pretend. You didn't freeze. That matters." He closed the folder. "You've been catching hell since you got here." "I know that. Don't think I don't see things. You kept your head down, did your work. That tells me more than all their noise. Don't let the noise back in." "Yes, Sergeant." As I turned to leave, he added quietly, "The platoon doesn't need another soldier. It needs proof that courage isn't gendered. You keep giving it to them." For the first time since I'd arrived, I left a superior's office with my spine straight instead of tense. Outside, the air felt cleaner, the sky that washed out blue you only get after storms. The guys were doing gear checks by the Humvees. Haynes looked up, met my eyes, then, to my shock, nodded. Not mockery, not sarcasm. Just a nod. Later that day, we visited the hospital. Carter insisted on driving. Doc came too, his presence grounding as always. I didn't expect Darnell to remember me, but the second we walked in, he lifted his head from the pillow and grinned weakly. "There she is," he rasped. "The reason I still have a pulse." I froze, unsure what to do with the attention. Doc chuckled. "She's not used to being called a hero yet, Private." Darnell looked straight at me. "They said you were calm. You looked me in the eye when no one else did. I thought I was done. You changed that." I didn't know what to say. Words felt too small for what we both knew had passed between us. That fragile thread between living and not, held only by stubborn hands. Carter stood near the doorway, arms crossed, quiet as ever. Darnell's gaze flicked to him. "This guy told me later what happened. Said you took command when everyone else froze. Guess the Army got it wrong about who leads." Doc grinned. "You hear that, Carter? She's gunning for your spot." Carter gave the faintest smile. "She can have it, long as she doesn't stop being stubborn." We stayed a few minutes longer. When we left, Darnell called after me. "They won't forget what you did. Don't let them pretend to." Back in the Jeep, the rain started again, softer now, like a heartbeat. No one spoke. But the silence wasn't heavy. It was full, the kind that carries meaning rather than emptiness. That night I dreamed of the field, of rain mixing with blood, of a pulse that refused to stop, of hands steady in the storm. When I woke, my pillow was damp. I couldn't tell if from sweat or tears. Over the next week, training resumed, but something had changed. The mockery had turned into questions, real ones. How'd you know what to do? What was it like? Were you scared? I told them the truth, Of course I was scared. Fear doesn't mean weakness. It means you're still paying attention. They didn't laugh at that. Maybe they were starting to understand. The day before our evaluation, Carter found me by the range, wiping down my rifle. "You ever think about going medic full-time?" he asked. I looked up. "Why?" "Because when things go wrong, you don't look for someone to fix it. You already start doing it." I smiled, small but real. That's not just me. That's what we're supposed to do. "Yeah," he said, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. But most of us forget until someone reminds us how. For the first time since joining the platoon, I didn't feel like the only one. What none of us knew was that another storm was coming, not made of rain or drills this time, but something that would tear at every scar we'd learned to hide. They woke us at 0400. No warning, no whispers in the hall, just the blare of alarms slicing through sleep. My boots hit the floor before I was even fully conscious. Carter's voice cut through the noise. "Gear up, now." We'd heard rumors for weeks, whispers that our unit might be deployed early, that the training we'd been grinding through was leading somewhere more than theoretical. But when you live inside the military machine, rumors are oxygen and poison at the same time. You breathe them in, knowing they might choke you. "Is this another drill?" I shouted, strapping my vest. Haynes answered from across the barracks, face pale in the flickering red lights. "Doesn't sound like one." The base loudspeakers cracked. "All personnel report to briefing. Priority level Delta." Delta. That word alone made the room fall silent. Real-world emergency. No simulations, no instructors pretending to bleed. By the time we reached the hangar, the rain from the night before had turned to fog, thick enough to swallow the edges of the trucks lined up in formation. The air smelled like oil, steel, and adrenaline. Captain Velez stood in front of the platoon, voice hard as sheet metal. At 0300, a convoy carrying relief supplies outside Fall Creek was hit by an IED. Civilian aid workers among them. We're being deployed for immediate extraction and perimeter security. This isn't training anymore. You could feel the oxygen shift in the room. Even the usual chatter from the back rows died. "Expect resistance," Velez continued. "This is rural, low-visibility terrain. Rules of engagement are strict. Identify, confirm, then fire. You'll move with precision. Mistakes cost lives." My stomach twisted. My first real deployment. My first real war. Klein stepped forward, voice quieter but more personal. "We move out in 15. You've trained for this. Trust your gear. Trust your team. And remember, courage isn't loud. It's consistent." He glanced at me when he said it, just for a second. But it was enough. We loaded into the convoy. 5 Humvees, a med truck, and a supply carrier. The engines roared to life, shaking the air like a low growl. Carter took the passenger seat in ours, scanning the horizon as if he could already see what waited. Haynes climbed into the back beside me. "Guess this is our graduation test," he muttered. "Let's just pass it," I said. The drive was long and tense. Fog hung low over the tree line, making the headlights scatter into ghosts. The radio cracked with static, occasional updates, then silence. The kind of silence that's heavier than noise. When the first explosion came, it didn't sound like Hollywood. It wasn't thunder or fireworks. It was blunt, like the earth had been punched from below. The vehicle ahead of us rocked sideways, smoke billowing out in a bloom of dust and fire. "Ambush!" Carter shouted. Gunfire followed, short, snapping bursts that sounded closer than they were. My pulse went sharp, focused. I grabbed my rifle, pressed my back to the side panel, scanning the tree line. Figures moved in the fog, shadows with purpose. "Contact left," someone yelled. The next few minutes blurred into instinct. Return fire, check cover, breathe. The smell of burned rubber and cordite filled the air. Training took over where fear wanted to live. Medic! The shout tore through the chaos. I spun. The med truck had taken shrapnel. One of the side doors hung half open. Someone was down inside. Without thinking, I bolted. Wait! Carter's voice cut off behind me as I sprinted through mud, low and fast. Bullets snapped nearby, close enough to hear the air tear. I reached the truck, ducked behind the wheel well, and peered inside. Private Allen was slumped against the wall, blood spreading under his armor. His eyes were open, but dazed. I'm hit, he breathed. I crawled in, my training clicking on like a switch. You're okay, I said, voice steady, though my hands were shaking. Talk to me. He tried to laugh but coughed instead. Didn't see it coming. Stay with me. I cut through his vest, exposed the wound, lower abdomen, deep but clean. I grabbed the seal, pressed hard. You're not going anywhere, understand? Gunfire cracked outside. Closer. I heard Carter shouting commands, returning fire. Every instinct screamed to duck, to hide, but Allen's pulse fluttered under my hand. Faint, desperate. A shape appeared in the doorway. Carter. We've got a minute, he shouted. Then we move. Help me lift him, I said. Together, we dragged Allen out, his boots leaving twin streaks in the mud. The rain started again, because of course it did. It always rains in stories like this, doesn't it? We reached the nearest Humvee. Haynes was there, pale but steady. He's hit bad, I told him. Keep pressure here. As I spoke, another blast hit somewhere behind us, closer this time. The ground rippled, a shockwave throwing me against the bumper. My helmet slammed metal. For a second, everything went white. When my vision cleared, I saw Carter on the ground, not moving. Carter, I screamed. I crawled to him, ignoring the pain blooming in my ribs. His vest was scorched, his face smeared with mud. Blood trickled from his temple. His pulse was there, weak but present. Relief and terror collided in my chest. Doc, 2 down, I yelled. Alvarez was already running, dragging a kit. Secure the perimeter, he shouted to whoever could still hear. I tore off my gloves, pressed my hands to Carter's head wound. Come on, I whispered. You're not leaving now. His eyelids fluttered. You, he murmured. Still. Bossy. Shut up, I said, choking on a laugh that wasn't a laugh at all. By the time the medevac arrived, the fight had quieted. The smoke drifted upward, gray and thin, like the sky was finally exhaling. They loaded Carter and Allen first. Haynes put a hand on my shoulder, hesitant, awkward. You saved them, he said. Both of them. I looked at my hands, slick with blood again, trembling. Not yet, I said. When the helicopter lifted, I stood in the mud, watching it shrink into a speck against the morning sky. The fog was burning off, slowly revealing the wreckage, torn earth, twisted steel, a reminder that survival isn't the same as peace. For the first time, I understood what Doc had meant. Drills are easy until they stop being pretend. That night, back at base, my bunk felt too small. Every creak in the ceiling sounded like distant gunfire. Every flash of lightning through the window looked like an explosion replaying itself. I thought of Carter's half-smile, the blood under my fingernails, the way fear had become something quiet, disciplined, almost sacred. And I realized this was only the beginning of what the world would ask of me. The base felt different after the ambush, quieter, though not in the peaceful sense. More like everyone was afraid to breathe too loud. Even laughter felt like something that had gone extinct. The rain had stopped, but the sky still carried that gunmetal gray that matched the mood of everyone on base. Carter had been evacuated 2 days earlier. They said he was stable, that he'd regain consciousness soon. Stable. That word had never felt so fragile. I told myself I'd believe it when I saw him. I hadn't realized how much space one person's presence could fill until his absence made the air too wide. The jokes, the brief nods across the chow line, the silent understanding during drills, all of it gone, replaced by a vacuum that hummed in my chest. Doc Alvarez found me cleaning the infirmary for the third time that morning. "You'll wear a hole in that floor, Private," he said. "I need to keep moving," I replied. He nodded, understanding the language of restless minds. "They'll let you visit him soon. Word is he asked for you when he woke up." I froze mid-scrub. "He did?" Doc smiled faintly. "You sound surprised." I just did my job." That's what heroes always say before realizing it wasn't just a job. I didn't respond. Heroes belonged in stories, not in mud-soaked fatigues that still smelled like smoke. When the orders came for me to accompany the transport to the field hospital 3 towns over, I didn't even ask why. Maybe Doc had pulled strings. Maybe the universe owed me one. The ride was long and silent. The driver, a young corporal with eyes too old for his age, didn't say a word. I didn't either. The rhythmic bump of tires over the road became a kind of heartbeat, one I could almost synchronize my nerves to. When I reached the hospital, it was nearly dusk. Rows of tents glowed with dim yellow light. The air was heavy with antiseptic and diesel. I found Carter in the recovery ward, pale but alive, one arm bandaged, an IV trailing into his vein. When he saw me, he grinned that lopsided grin that made it impossible to stay stoic. "Guess I'm getting too used to you saving my life," he murmured. "You're terrible at avoiding trouble," I said, sitting beside him. He chuckled weakly. "If I were better at it, you'd be bored." "Not true," I said, though my voice betrayed something softer. "I'd find something to fix." We sat in silence for a while, the kind that's earned rather than awkward. Outside, a helicopter lifted, and the shadows in the tent quivered like ghosts. Then he said, "Before the ambush, I wrote something, just in case." He reached under his pillow, pulled out a folded envelope. My name was scrawled across it in shaky black ink. "What is this?" "A letter. I figured if things went south, you should have it. Thought maybe I'd never get to say some things out loud. Carter." He held up a hand. "You don't have to read it now, but don't throw it away either." I turned the envelope over in my hands, feeling its weight. Paper shouldn't feel that heavy. "I'm not losing you," I said. He smiled. "You already didn't." His eyes began to close, exhaustion winning the fight against painkillers. I stayed there long after he fell asleep, listening to the machines breathe for him. That night, back in the bunk they'd set up for visitors, I finally opened the letter. "Hey," it began. Simple, unguarded, like him. "If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it out, or I'm stuck in some hospital too out of it to talk. Either way, I need to say something. You changed everything. Not just the platoon. Me. You showed us that toughness doesn't come from shouting the loudest or shooting the straightest. It comes from showing up when no one thinks you can. I used to think courage was about never being scared. Watching you, I realized it's about feeling it and doing the right thing anyway. If I'm gone, promise me one thing. Don't quit. Don't let them make you small again. You belong here more than any of us. And if by some miracle I'm still breathing, feel free to hit me for writing something this sentimental. Carter." I read it twice, maybe 3 times. By the end, the ink had blurred, not from rain this time. The next morning, I found Doc by the mess tent. "He's going to make it," he said before I could ask. Stubborn types always do. "He wrote me a letter," I said. Doc raised an eyebrow. "That serious, huh?" "It wasn't that kind of letter." He smiled knowingly. "Then it was exactly that kind of letter." I laughed despite myself. For the first time in weeks, the sound didn't feel out of place. When Carter was transferred back to base 2 weeks later, the platoon lined up to greet him. Even Haynes clapped him on the back, muttering something that might have been gratitude. He caught my eye across the tarmac. No words, just that same faint nod we'd exchanged 100 times. An entire language built in silence. That night, as the sun dropped behind the hills and the air turned gold and tired, I tucked the letter into the pocket of my uniform. Not as a relic, but as armor. Because deep down, I knew the fight wasn't over. The battlefield would move, maybe overseas, maybe inside my own head. But it was waiting, and next time, it wouldn't just test whether I could save someone else. It would test whether I could save myself. Deployment orders came fast. Too fast. 1 minute we were joking about Carter's stitches. The next, we were packing duffels for the Middle East. Dust replaced rain, and the hum of helicopters replaced the comfort of the base's silence. It wasn't training anymore. It wasn't theory. It was war. They sent us to a valley no one had ever heard of, a place locals called Al-Kafir, which roughly translated to the Forgotten. Fitting name. We were there to escort aid convoys through mountain passes crawling with insurgents. Every ridge, every shadow could hide a bullet. I'd seen fear before, but out here it felt different. It didn't scream. It whispered. It settled into the cracks between orders, into the way hands trembled when loading magazines. It lived in the quiet moments between radio calls. Carter had healed enough to deploy, though the scar across his temple glowed red in the desert sun. He still teased me whenever I checked on him, but the laughter never reached his eyes anymore. He'd seen what I'd seen. Our platoon moved like a single organism, slow, deliberate, hyper-aware. I was the medic now, officially. Doc Alvarez had rotated home, but not before leaving me with a single instruction. You'll want to save everyone. You can't. Save who you can, and forgive yourself for the rest. I told him I'd try. I didn't tell him I wasn't sure I knew how. The first 2 weeks were uneventful. Hot days, cold nights, sand and everything. Then came the mission, the one that changed everything. We were escorting a humanitarian convoy, 2 trucks loaded with food and medicine, plus our 3 Humvees. The radio chatter was light, even joking at times. But when the laughter stopped all at once, I knew something had shifted. Movement on the ridge, Carter said, his voice low but steady. 2 o'clock. Klein's response crackled back. Hold position, confirm targets. I raised my binoculars. Heat shimmer distorted everything. But then, a flash. Metal glinting in sunlight. RPG, someone shouted. The explosion swallowed the lead truck before I could even register the sound. The blast wave threw me sideways, sand biting into my skin. Ears ringing, vision blurred, taste of dust and blood. Everyone down! Klein bellowed. Bullets started raining from the ridge, sharp, rhythmic, unforgiving. The air screamed. Carter returned fire, his movements automatic. I crawled toward the convoy. Instinct, not thought. A driver was trapped in the burning cab, pounding weakly against the door. The flames licked closer. I didn't think. I ran. The metal was blistering hot, searing through my gloves. Hang on, I yelled. I grabbed the handle, pulled until something in my shoulder screamed. The latch gave. The door swung open, and I hauled him out, half carrying, half dragging through the sand. Medic down, someone shouted. It took me a second to realize they meant me. My leg was bleeding. Shrapnel, small but deep. I didn't stop. Stay with me, I told the driver, pressing a dressing to his burns. His breathing was ragged, but there was life in it. Carter appeared beside me, crouched low. We have to move. They're flanking. I've got him. I'll cover you. He rose to fire, and the shot that hit him was so quiet, it didn't sound real. Just a sharp pop, and then he was on the ground, clutching his side. "Carter!" I screamed. I dropped beside him, dragging him behind the wreckage. Blood pooled fast, too fast. The world narrowed to the sound of his gasping breaths. "Stay with me," I said, pressing my hands to the wound. "You're fine. It's through and through. You're fine." He tried to speak, but blood bubbled at his lips. "You always say that." "And I'm always right," I snapped, refusing to let my voice break. "Klein," I yelled over the radio. "Man down. I need evac. Now." Static answered. The ridge gunfire drowned everything. "Listen to me," Carter said, voice fading. "If I don't make it..." "Don't," I hissed. "You made me promise not to quit. Now you keep yours." He smiled weakly. Always bossy. Another explosion rocked the valley, closer this time. The shockwave tore through the smoke. My ears rang. When I looked back down, his eyes were closed. "Carter!" I shook him. "Open your eyes. Look at me." Nothing. I pressed harder on the wound, ignoring the shaking in my arms. "You don't get to die here. Not with me watching." I don't remember what happened next, only that by the time the air support arrived, the ridge had gone silent, and I was still there, hands slick with blood that wouldn't stop coming. When they pulled us out, the world became static and rotor wash. Someone said critical, someone said stable, but I didn't hear the rest. At the field hospital, they separated us. They took him one way, me another. My shoulder dislocated, my leg torn up, dehydration setting in, but I didn't feel any of it. Only the echo of his voice, always bossy. That night, I sat outside the triage tent, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like iodine and smoke. The stars above the desert were sharp enough to cut. Doc's words came back to me like a curse. "You'll want to save everyone. You can't." I looked down at my hands, stained red even after scrubbing. My chest ached in ways no bullet could cause. When the medic came to tell me Carter was in surgery, alive, barely, I didn't cry. Not yet. I just whispered to the night. "Then save him, damn it. Save him this time." Because I wasn't sure I could forgive myself if he didn't make it. Carter survived. That's the first thing people ask when they hear this story. Did he make it? And I tell them yes, because that part's true. But what they don't ask, what they never think to ask, is what happened to you afterward. That's the part that's harder to explain. When we came home, the war didn't stay behind. It rode with us, tucked into the seams of our uniforms, hidden in the silence between breaths. It lived in the way Carter flinched at sudden sounds, and in the way I couldn't sleep without hearing the hum of rotor blades in the dark. They pinned medals on our chests and called us heroes. I remember standing in formation, the metal cold against my skin, while the commander spoke about bravery and sacrifice. But the only thing I could think about was the smell of burning oil and the sound of Carter's heartbeat under my hands. After the ceremony, he found me outside by the flagpole, the air heavy with humidity and fireworks echoing from the city beyond the base. He leaned on a crutch, color back in his face, but his eyes still had that faraway look, like part of him was still out there in the sand. "You ever think it's strange?" he asked. "What?" "How they cheer for us for surviving something we'll never stop reliving." I nodded. "Yeah. Strange is one word for it." He smiled, soft and tired. "You kept your promise. You didn't quit." "And you kept yours," I said, nudging his crutch. "Still breathing." He laughed, but it faded quickly. "I don't know what to do now. I don't even know how to go home." "Me neither," I admitted. "But maybe that's not the point. Maybe home isn't a place anymore. Maybe it's whoever understands the noise inside your head." He looked at me then, really looked, and said, Then I guess I'm home. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. The silence between us said everything. Over the next months, we both tried to adjust. The Army called it reintegration. I called it pretending. The world had kept spinning while we were gone, but I no longer fit its rhythm. Crowds made me anxious. Quiet made me worse. So, I found work at a VA rehabilitation center, part-time at first, then full-time. Helping other soldiers rebuild their bodies felt like the only thing that made sense. I saw versions of myself in their eyes, the haunted kind of broken that only someone who's been there can recognize. Carter visited sometimes, always limping a little less, always carrying that same lopsided grin. He'd bring coffee, tease me about how serious I looked, then quietly help a patient fix a broken prosthetic strap or mend a frayed wheelchair belt. He never talked about the valley. Neither did I. Some stories don't need retelling. They just need understanding. One afternoon, months later, I found a letter in my locker. Same handwriting. Same uneven scrawl. You once told me you fix things because you don't know how to stop. Maybe it's time to fix yourself too. I got offered a position teaching field medicine at Fort Bragg. They want me to train recruits, to teach them what you taught me. That courage doesn't come with rank or gender, it comes with heart. I said yes, but only if you'd join me. I don't know if I'm still the man who went to war, or someone else entirely. But I know I'm better because of you. Always bossy, always brave. Think about it. Carter. I sat there holding that letter for a long time, the buzz of fluorescent lights filling the room. For the first time since coming home, I realized I wasn't trembling. My hands were steady. That night, I walked out to the training field behind the center. The grass was tall, the wind soft. Fireflies blinked like distant tracer rounds. For the first time in years, I didn't feel haunted by the sound. I felt accompanied. I thought about the girl who'd arrived at boot camp terrified and angry. The one who was mocked for being too small, too fragile, too female. The one who had to prove, over and over, that she belonged. And I thought about the woman sitting there now. Scarred, yes, but unbroken. Someone who'd held life in her hands and refused to let it slip away. The next morning, I packed a duffel, wrote a note for my supervisor, and caught a bus heading south. When I reached Fort Bragg, Carter was waiting at the gate, hands in his pockets, grin ready. "Took you long enough," he said. "I needed to make sure you'd learn to follow orders," I replied. He laughed, a real laugh this time. And for the first time, I believed we were both going to be okay. We started teaching that week, not just about tourniquets and trauma kits, but about resilience. About how survival isn't just keeping your body alive. It's forgiving your soul for the things it had to do to stay that way. The new recruits listened like their lives depended on it. Maybe they did. Years later, when people ask about the war, I don't tell them about the firefights or the medals. I tell them about Carter's letter, about the convoy, about the wounded soldier who looked at me and saw something the world hadn't yet. Because that's what saved me in the end. Not strength, not skill, but being seen. Every scar on my skin tells a story of something I survived. Every heartbeat reminds me why. And whenever I step onto that training field, hearing the cadence of boots against the dirt, I whisper the words that carried me through everything. I was the only woman in my platoon. They mocked me, until the wounded soldier spoke. Then finally, they listened. The end.